14 months ago, this was a log laying in the field. My name's Colin, and I'm going to show you how I turned this log into a table you see here today. Well, I've been burning the midnight oils trying to get this finished ahead of Christmas. Unfortunately, I'm a few days early, so this is coffee to stay awake instead of tequila to celebrate. Anyways, so this log came from Missouri, and I drug it home and milled it, and so here's the start of the process. So this death trap looking thing here is my sawmill that I built a few years ago, and yes, it probably is a death trap. I'm completely aware that I need to put guards back on it, but I widened it a little while ago and just haven't gotten back around to it. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting a 6-inch slab off the top. I'll cut that into boards later. It just makes it a little bit easier to manage such a large log. But from here, I'm going to cut the actual slabs we're going to use for the table. And as I'm recording this voiceover, I'm noticing that I fully intended to throw the pith away and realized also that I didn't do that, and it is now part of my table. So great job on that, Colin. And here I am about to do a grain reveal, and just look at all of that beautiful pith wood that's about to be my table. Man, I really don't make it easy for myself. So the next step in the process is drying. So all of it is stacked and stickered, and it will air dry for roughly 6 months until I put it in my solar kiln.
One eternity later.
And that brings us to current. These lovely slabs are dry and they're ready to use, except for the fact that while they dried, they weren't completely flat, and they've got a good bit of twist in them.
Oh no!
Again, making more work for myself, so let's fix that. Now, my previous video was actually about how I untwisted these slabs, so I'm just going to glaze through this very briefly, and if you want, I'll put a link in the description down below on exactly what I did. But in short, I cut each slab into 3 pieces. I put each of those 3 pieces on my flattening table, which is my other death trap, as you see here. Once one side was flat, I ran it through a planer and then glued it back together. It worked out phenomenal. So that gets us to where we are right now. Now, true to form, I didn't put dowels in one of these slabs, and it caused a misalignment you just saw. So I've got to put this one slab back on the flattening table and straighten out all of my misalignments to get it perfectly flat, which we've done here. So now that both halves of my table are flat, it's time to join them together. And as you can see here, there's just a little bit of a gap between the 2 slabs, so I've got to fix that next. So to fix this, I'm using my track saw, and I'm lining it up to where the edge of the track lines up with where the 2 slabs meet. And as I run the saw over it, it removes little bits of material so that I eventually work my way through that gap, and both of the slabs will meet up exactly flat, as you'll see here in just a second. So I've got some clamps here kind of squeezing the 2 together, but this is close enough that I can work with it and make it do what I need to do. Enter my Chinese domino, otherwise known as a doweling machine, and it works just the same way. It drills a couple of 5/16 dowel holes in the side of the slab. It's kind of hard to push in, so you really got to put your hips into it to get it to do what it needs to do.
It's all in hips. It's all in hips. Get off of me!
90s Adam Sandler, chef's kiss. Anyways, at this point, we're down to just gluing the 2 halves of the table together, and it's as simple as squirting a little glue in there and putting our dowels in, and then sliding the 2 halves of the table together. And this went shockingly easy. I kept waiting for something to go wrong, and it really just kind of kept sliding right together, as you'll see in just a second. I'm going to let it go more or less in real time, and yeah, easy, no drama. I'm happy with this. This was actually way less stressful than really anything I've ever done. I mean, it's got a nice tight joint there, and no drama. We're still nice and flat. So at this point, if I were using quality lumber, it would be down to scraping off some squeeze out and cleaning up the sides of the slabs a little bit for sanding. But alas, I keep choosing to use poor quality boards. So now I'm going to cut these edges flush and start on the epoxy, which I really loathe. Well, why do you hate it so much? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because it's expensive, it is messy, and it always leaks. Always. Plus, the cure time is especially off-putting. I like instant gratification, and if I have to wait a day, that just really irks me. Now, I say all that, but sometimes there's just no avoiding it, and unfortunately this was one of those cases because the area that I have encased in caulk right there was just absolutely rotten, punky, spongy stuff, so it has to be stabilized, and this is really the best way to do that, short of just not using that piece of wood altogether. So obviously we're too far down the road. Anyways, I did alright with this pour. Fortunately, there weren't a lot of voids that go all the way through, so there wasn't as much that needed to be done as far as kind of sealing the bottom of the slab. And on this end down here, same thing is true, and I did enough taping with the Tyvek tapes where everything stayed where it was supposed to stay. And I can say it now, this is the first pour I think that I've ever done that did not leak. So there we go.
I am invincible!
So these large slabs like this are relatively thin compared to their width. So over time, with seasonal variations and humidity and whatnot, they can start to turn into potato chips, if you will. So to circumvent that, we insert these C-channels in, and they provide rigidity and support and kind of prevent that from happening. So I've traced out where it's going to go. There's going to be 3 of them across this table. So what I'm going to do now is use 2 routers, one of which is a very small bit, and I'm going to use it to route out the part that goes down into the slab. And then with the wider spoils bit, I'm going to recess this top part so it sits flush with the top or the bottom of the table. And so that's what I'm going to do now. All right, so I have my drill bit installed, and it is just slightly smaller than the diameter of this threaded insert here, and I also have a piece of tape marking for depth. And so I'm just going to drill all these holes and move on to the next part. Just like that. So now that I have all my holes drilled, it's as simple as just getting the right size hex drive bit and running these things in. So the supports are finally complete. Now that that is done, the last big construction task here is going to be doing the same type of inserts but for the base. So I'm really excited to show you the base, and let's get it going. So I would have loved to have fabricated my own fancy pants wooden base, but I've followed Great Casting for a while on Instagram and have really admired pieces he creates. Plus, we have kind of an industrial motif going in our house, so it was really easy to just decide to pay the money, have such a truly beautiful piece of metalwork in our house. So what I'm going to do right now is carefully slide this thing together so that I can start laying out the holes for the mounts. That is 1.5 inches. All right, so we are centered. And just as I did last time, mark the holes. All right, rinse and repeat. Well, the downside of using a prefab table base is you don't get to say you made something cool yourself, but the upside is you're basically done with construction at this point. And today being December 16th, and I have to be done before Christmas, I'd say that was probably the right choice in my case. So from here, I'm gonna take all the metal back out. I'm going to finish sanding it, flip it over, and start working on some of the knot holes and stuff on the top. And so began every woodworker's favorite part of the project, and that's sanding. And I sanded, and I sanded, and I sanded some more until I finally thought that I was through, but it was a short-lived celebration because I still had the bottom. Nice. And with much difficulty, my wife and I moved this heavy piece inside where I set about to finishing it, and I'm going to apologize in advance for the plumber's crack you're about to see. I truly didn't know that was hanging out there, and it was too far gone for me to go and redo the footage, so we're stuck with that. Anyways, for a finish, we're using a 2-part hard wax oil from Rubio Monaco. It's one of my favorites just because it's so easy to apply, it smells decent, and there's really not much bad to say about it. So after I finish the top, put the base on, flip it over, and then the top's a little bit easier. I'm just using a spatula to spread it all around. Eventually I will get to a point where I buff it all in as well, wipe it off, and it is done, done, and done. I started this project on December 9th and finished it on December the 18th, so 9 days, not too bad considering I work a full-time job and this is just a hobby, so I'll take that as a win. Well, if you're still here, I appreciate you sticking around to the end, and if you don't mind, hit that thumbs up button. It's free for you, it helps me, and we'll see you on the next one.